Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for joining us. So welcome to this Amalgam Network event in collaboration with Emerald Network for Black History Month. So today we have a session on Black Muslim women in tech discussion with Amina Aweis, or also known as Develop with Amina, or Yeah, She Writes. So I don't know which one you prefer, Amina. You tend to use both of them.
Whichever one.
So it's just flexible. So today I think we're focusing more on the develop side, or in terms of tech, but it's fine. You can always share your gems with us in terms of writing stories or sharing our stories. So I'm your host today, Bilkisu Ibrahim. The format will be a 20-minute discussion followed by Q&A. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat and your comments in there. So feel free to do that. So I'll briefly introduce Amina before starting the discussion. So Amina is a writer, content creator, and software engineer. She's also an ambassador for London Screen Academy, which is a sixth form founded by names in the industry behind the production of the Harry Potter series, James Bond, and Paddington, as in Paddington the Bear, I assume. Yeah. And she is also 1/3 of the Black Muslim Girl podcast, which is a space for Black Muslim girls to vibe, elevate, and educate each other. Amina is passionate about authentic storytelling and believes it's what connects people together. She is also pushing to get more women in the tech industry. So again, thank you and welcome, Amina, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess we could start off with talking about your journey in terms of how did you get into tech? My understanding is that you started off in the film and TV industry. So it would be really interesting to understand, how did you make that shift?
So initially I was doing quite a lot of creative roles. So I was normally like within marketing and PR, within the film industry and outside of the film industry. As I wanted to move up the ladder and gain more skills so that I wasn't just stuck at like junior level, I would come across things like WordPress developing, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So I just started researching about that a bit more, and coding is something that was always like at the back of my mind, but I didn't really pursue it or anything like that. So yeah, I just started doing some research, and through that I was looking at boot camps, but then boot camps are really expensive, so I put that to the back burner for a while, and I would just go to events, tech events that were free around London at the time. And yeah, I was just connecting with people in the industry and keeping up with them on LinkedIn and social media. And it was through Twitter where someone who saw me tweeting about coding sent me a link to a bootcamp opportunity that Code First Girls and BT were running for the first time. And I applied to that. And I didn't really think much of it after I applied because I didn't hear back for so long. So it's been like, it was a couple of months. And then November 2018, literally a few days before the course started on the 6th of November, I got a call back saying, oh, we have a space for you. And I just thought, well, I've been wanting to try something different now. And I kind of got to the point at that time where I just wanted to shift into something that would challenge me a bit more and transition into an industry where I feel like I could actually grow and upskill. So I just took that opportunity. It was a very intensive boot camp, 4 months. And after that, provided that we had to like complete assessments and pass those assessments, some of us got interviews to apply for roles at BT. And yeah, I did that, and I guess they really liked my interview because this is where I work now. So yeah, that's a summary of how I made that shift.
Okay, that's great. And that's quite insightful, I guess. So from my understanding, it just seemed like something you were already attracted to, and you already had an idea about this is maybe a path you want to explore, and an opportunity came up and you took it.
Sort of. Like, it wasn't until later on down the line that coding started to pop up as a skill that I needed to keep my eye out for and maybe potentially upskilling. It wasn't something that I was like, okay, I know exactly what I want to do. Because even with the boot camp, it covered quite a wide range of things. And even in the role I'm in now, while I enjoy it, I definitely do see myself exploring other aspects within the industry too, because I'm just so new to it. There wasn't like a specific role that I was like, okay, I've got my eye on this. It was just more of, how do I get my foot in the industry? Because once you've got your foot in the industry, it's all about now how you want to move around and progress. Because the tech industry is quite big and there's a lot to it, and there is a lot more room to progress in the industry in comparison to some of the other industries I've been in so far. So it was just more of like, let me just find a way to get in, and then once I get in, I can really start learning and building up my skill set even more, and then potentially exploring what else it has to offer. So it was sort of like I fell into it, but I was also keeping my eye out and just making sure I was networking with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a mixture of both, I guess.
So in terms of that, because you kind of touched upon it, so I have a question in the sense of, what were some of the assumptions you had going in and that have been challenged or changed or have shifted? And what insight do you think you've gained being in the tech industry that you think would be helpful for anybody who was considering going down that path that maybe you weren't aware of beforehand?
Um, to me, I just thought it was like boys, because when I was like on YouTube watching these videos, a lot of the tutorials, a lot of the Q&As, they were mainly like white American dudes. So I always assumed like it tends to be their sort of thing. Um, so I assumed like you had to be like super nerdy and love maths and all that logical stuff, basically. And when I actually got into it, I realized there's still quite a lot of creativity involved, even in tech and even within my role as a software engineer. Like, you still have to think about things in a certain way, but you can still be creative with how you're solving a problem. It just might not look exactly how I'm used to when I was in the film industry or just working in the creative field. So I think that's one thing that um, challenged my perception before entering the industry, that you couldn't be creative and be in the tech industry doing certain roles. So that was like the main thing. Another thing was like, I don't see a lot of women, let alone women who are Black and Muslim. Um, in fact, I haven't actually worked with a Black colleague since I started this job up until now. Um, I haven't virtually, like when I'm communicating with Black people in the tech community, is outside of my job. So that's something I
So
wouldn't say it challenged my perspective. It was more of, why is this the case? So I was a bit shocked because I realized, okay, there might not be that much diversity, but I didn't think it was that bad. So when I got into the industry, it's like, whoa, this is even worse than the film industry. So I guess there was that. And another thing also, that you needed to have a computer science degree. I don't have a degree at all. So that was something that was weighing on my mind, because I felt like, is this going to be like the creative scene where you can still pick up skills and build up without people having to question you or undermine you because you don't have a degree? And so far I haven't had that. So that was something that reassured me, because that I did think like you'd have to have a computer science degree, or you'd have to have studied something computer science related before going into this industry, but I haven't done neither. So, and I'm still here. So yeah,
definitely.
those are some of the things.
Yeah, so that's something that I think is really key and really important, especially unique in your situation. The fact that you've gone into this industry without having a background in it, and you're pretty much self-taught in the sense of you didn't go to uni and you didn't study it formally. You took a course and you applied yourself and you got to where you are today. And I think that's very important for people that might think it's so far away or it's difficult. And if you don't have a degree that you've studied for 3 or 4 years, that it's not an option. But the fact that you've done it shows that it is possible. And I think it kind of ties into the next question in the sense of, and you just touched upon it in your previous point, the fact that there is that lack of diversity. So why do you think there aren't that many Black people in the tech industry, let alone say Black Muslim women per se? And why do you think that is in particular? What do you think is the challenge there?
Um, from what I've researched recently, I think you see the drop in quite a young age. So you see the drop around year 6, year 7. So I think, and this isn't just limited to the tech industry. I think it's with a lot of industries that's presented as quite male or masculine. Because normally what you'll find, and what people have found who do this research, is that up until 11 years old, there isn't as much of a distinction between the passions from male students versus female students. It isn't as wide of a gap until it gets to secondary school. So it starts quite early, as it seems. And so there's a lack of access in some of these subjects. Like when I was in school, computer science wasn't even an option. ICT was the closest to tech you would get. So it's not really a skill that teachers are always equipped with in schools on a larger scale. It's not necessarily a subject that's embedded in all the curriculums in all of the schools. And so when you already don't have that foundation where kids can actually be engaged with something that they might be passionate about beyond just the hobby or something they do outside of school, then you can already see like the drop in numbers with how many kids from diverse backgrounds or how many women in comparison to men picking up a skill like coding, and that filters through to A levels, all up until university sometimes. So I think it starts very early on, and part of that is just not something that's promoted a lot in schools. And on top of that, I feel like there isn't a lot of people that look like us in the industry to begin with. The thing is, right, it's not that not enough Black people are applying, for example. There are a lot more that are applying, but with a lot of companies, the hiring process, there's some loose ends on that. Also, the retention rate. So where I work, the retention rate isn't that great. So even if you do get into the company, there isn't an environment clearly where it would make someone want to stay. So that has been quite an issue, not just in this company, but across the board. There is that problem of retaining people that do join who are younger, who are from a diverse background. And I think there's just a lack of representation as well. So all of these things, they start at very young ages. So when that's filtered throughout the years, if you've now got someone saying, oh, try this, but they don't look like you, it's very hard to be convinced. And that was something that I had to like battle with also. If it wasn't for things like social media, it would have been even harder for me to just accept like, okay, I can be in this industry despite what my background is like. And you know, you've got platforms like Code First Girls, you've got all these online organizations that are trying to now bridge that gap between young people who are from disadvantaged communities to try and get into these industries. But I think the issue does start quite young, because even now, like there's some of the resources that I've created, they do target a wide range of people. So it targets kids, parents, and everyone else in between. Like there is no age limit or there's no barriers per se. This is a skill that is in demand. It's a skill that can be learned. It varies in terms of difficulty depending on how you learn, but it's not something that's completely out of reach. But trying to make that information more available and accessible to people, I think that contributes to a large reason why there isn't a lot of diversity, and it starts from a very young age. So yeah.
That's key to flag, and the fact that you mentioned getting kids and their parents involved in that in those early stages to encourage them to join the tech industry. So I guess in regards to that, when you talk about retention, do you think it's a matter of people go into tech industry and see that nobody looks like them, or are there potentially other factors that means that people feel like they can't stay in that industry?
I think there's other factors that feed into that. So if there's no one that looks like you, then the work environment isn't as comfortable for you in comparison to your white colleagues, for example. And when you're in an environment where you're not understood and there isn't someone like you to understand you, it can be quite mentally exhausting. I've been in this role for like a year and a bit, and there's literally no one that looks like me at all. Like I'm literally the diversity in the team. So when you're not around people that look like you, it does weigh on you after a while, especially when you're also not in a city. So it's like where you live, there's no one, there's barely anyone that looks like you, and then you're going into a workplace, there's no one that looks like you. That does play an effect after a while. And I think with younger people, we are much more aware of our work environments and how it should serve us in terms of our basic needs and safeguarding. So we're much more likely to move around and switch about when we don't feel safe, or we don't feel like we're progressing the way we need to. We are much more likely to, when given the opportunity. So I think there are a lot of other factors on top of the lack of representation, and they're all very interlinked, and you can't, it's very hard to navigate the space when you're one of few, or if not the only one. So yeah.
I'm assuming you're based outside of London.
Yeah.
Okay, so that keeps it even more interesting, because of course we all know London is very diverse and it's a hub of activity. So if you are elsewhere, it can feel like that. So I think that's very important as well. And sometimes we're having these conversations, they can be very London centric. So it's good to have a perspective from outside of London and to be in such a niche industry as well. So thanks for sharing that. So going back to encouraging people to join the tech industry, how do you think is the best way to do that? So you talked about mentioning resources for parents and for young kids. So what about people that are maybe already in a career or are a little bit older and they're at that point where they can make their own independent decisions? So how can we potentially target that demographic in terms of if they want to go for another career path, or they're interested in tech, but they think it's too much for them to probably pursue in terms of study, and getting in seems difficult. And so how would you encourage them to consider tech?
So I actually did a video on like tech jobs in the industry, where if, for example, coding seems like very intense for you, there are still other jobs within the industry that don't necessarily require you to learn how to code. And a lot of those skills are very much transferable, a lot more transferable as you think, from the industry that you might already be working in at the moment. So um, I've informed people about things like that. I've got another resource where I've broken down my current job so people can see exactly what I work with and how my stack at work looks like, just so people can get an understanding. I think transparency is probably like a big part of this, because it's all fun and games like showing people like, oh look, you can make it in the tech industry, but helping them understand what it's like day to day and what that sort of work entails is also just as important. And I don't think there should be an age limit, and especially not in this industry that's growing, and in the UK it is in demand. I don't think capping an age as to when you should switch into the industry is advisable. I've had many parents who have watched videos where I've talked about other roles within the industry that don't require coding, that have then gone and upskilled and then secured a job during a pandemic. So it is doable. It takes a lot more work, but I think when it comes to switching careers in general, it's more about what the job description looks like before you focus too much on the job role. Because what you'll find is there's all these job titles in the industry, but sometimes when you look at the job descriptions, you will find a lot of similarities between different roles. And you can also then look at your current job that you're in right now that you want to switch from, and see what similarities you can find within those descriptions. And then where you can't find a similarity, break down the skills that they're looking for, and then take it from there and be like, okay, this is what I need to upskill in. And then you start pivoting and, putting your steps together. So that's something that I definitely want to focus on a lot more, because there are a lot of people, especially in the times we're in right now, where they've been in industries that have been impacted by COVID, for example, and they've realized, okay, maybe I need to pivot, maybe I need to upskill now, I need to explore my options. Or they might just be like, in their last year of uni or about to go to university, and they have all these options to assess. So yeah, that's something that I definitely want to focus on, because it's a lot more being able to understand what it is that companies and different industries are looking for, especially in the tech industry, where there are a lot more jobs to fill than people think. It's just about where to look.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I guess in terms of, why do you think it's important to have Black Muslim women in the tech industry? And I guess that kind of falls into the question of being Black or being Muslim as well. Why do we need more diversity in the tech industry more generally? Because I guess going back, I recently read articles where they talked about when it comes to things like sensors and things like skin tone, or when it comes to technology being built and not considering other skin tones and how that can impact as well. So when it comes to maybe being Muslim, maybe there's another angle in that regard. Are there things that have come to mind for you, or you've come across where because of a lack of diversity, there might be a blind spot for the industry?
I think if we're going to focus on being Muslim, I think for Muslim women, this is a really good industry in terms of um, maintaining a halal environment, especially if you're going to be working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the times to you're not having to compromise as much because a lot of tech roles are very flexible in terms of working hours. And obviously now with the whole COVID situation, a lot of tech roles are remote anyway. So if you are someone that's thinking of doing it part-time or doing it full-time, there's a lot more room for negotiation in terms of your working hours, which is great if you're a mother with kids or, you know, if you're trying to work around time because of the situation you're in. So there are a lot of perks and advantages that are actually quite useful as a Muslim and as a Muslim woman as well. And in terms of diversifying the industry, there's a lot of empathy that's lacking within the tech industry in general. A lot of tools are being built, a lot of software is being built, but they're lacking the human aspect from a diverse perspective. And I think the tech industry is starting to finally click for them, like, oh, we need people from so and so places to give us more insight to develop our tool even further. So you can avoid situations where a bot is, you know, placed on Twitter to feed in information and it becomes a Nazi in like an hour or so, you know, situations like that. So, you know, like it's gotten to the point where practically speaking, they do need people from different perspectives who are coming from more creative backgrounds, who are from more diverse backgrounds anyway. It's literally in their own interest now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gotten to that stage. And I really do want Muslim women, especially, to pick up on this because this is probably an industry that works really well in their favor in terms of just flexibility, in terms of a more Muslim environment, especially if you're going to be working remotely. You can work from the comfort of your home and you don't have to compromise on so many things. I think the idea of like work drinks is probably non-existent now, so even better.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like it's one of those industries where you can spot a problem and you can equip yourself with the right skills or knowledge or find the right people and, you know, come up with solutions that can benefit your community. And it just feels a lot more empowering because you can be practical and you can be, you know, creative and still stay political and on board and everything like in between. So it's a blind spot from the industries, but I think it's also a very good opportunity for Muslims to take advantage of because we're steering towards a digital age now where the digital space has expanded even more and it's shaping more of our everyday lives. So it's better to be in tune with what's going on and be equipped with the right skills, which is why like when I started rolling out resources, I did a generic one first, but then I wanted parents and children to have a chance to get involved with that at a young age. So whether it's benefiting a 3-year-old toddler and also the parent or vice versa, like I still want them to be aware like this is a skill that's valuable because growing up, even amongst like I come from a Somali background, like even amongst our parents and stuff, like talking about coding, it was related to gaming. It wasn't something that was taken as seriously as like a doctor or a teacher or, you know. So I think that perception is now shifting.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really good opportunity for so many Muslims to take advantage and pick up on a skill that is going to be extremely valuable if it's not already.
I definitely agree. And I do see some change. And there are, especially with yourself, just young women like you talking about what they're doing and being so open as well and encouraging others to take this career path and see it as an option. And also not just taking that path, but actually, you know, climbing that ladder and career progression, which is so important. And I guess you talked about earlier about networking. Why do you think that's important, particularly in this industry? What makes networking so important?
I mean, apart from being presented with opportunities like jobs, etc., I think it's good to build networks because it keeps you in the loop. The
Mm-hmm.
tech industry is changing so fast all the time, and it's just good to have people around you or people that you can connect with to, you know, just keep you in the loop and you can keep them in the loop as well. I think it's good to build communities within the industry because when you have that sort of network, it's much easier to ask for help, ask for support, contribute what you can, And I think it's very important within our communities as well to be able to have that infrastructure in place, or at least start building up on it, because there's a lot of work to be done within the next few years, especially in the times that we're living in right now, where there's so much uncertainty. It is becoming a situation where you need to rely on your networks, you need to rely on your community, and we have each other. So I think it's very important in that aspect, aside from just the career advancement and being connected with opportunities. I think it's just important to, value people and learn from people, and they can learn from you as well. I think that side of networking is underestimated a lot, and I think that's probably benefited me a lot more than I give credit for. So I think that's why, personally, for me, like, networking is super important, and just bridging those communities within the industry and then stretching beyond that.
Thank you so much, Amina. And just conscious of time and seeing that we're coming to an end, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And this is why I really wanted you to come on here, because you're very open and you love to share your journey with everybody, and you're very honest about that. And I think that's very encouraging. So again, thank you for that. And you mentioned the resources that you've been creating. Where's the best place for people to find those?
So I leave them under all my YouTube videos.
Okay.
And if you follow me on Twitter, then I post it quite a lot, because it's a Google Doc, so I always update it whenever I pick something new at work. So that's where you can normally find them. But I can send you the links if you want to share them as well.
Okay, that would be great. So thank you again, Amina. So unfortunately, this is going to come to a close now. It's been very insightful, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and for you, Amina, joining us and for giving us a very insightful session. I'm sure people have picked up and learned a lot from this, and I would encourage everyone to follow Amina on Twitter. She always is dropping gems that would help you whichever career path or whichever industry you're in. So they're not necessarily, they might be tech focused, but you can definitely take away from them. So you can follow on Twitter at She Writes. I believe it's underscore at the end. And also on Instagram, it's the same handle. And also you can find her YouTube, which is Develop with Amina. So you can also join us next week for our scheduled session with Naima B. Roberts, which is Black Muslim Women, Our Story, Our Narrative. So look out for details for that. And you can follow us at Amalgam Network, at Amalgam Network on Instagram, and at emerald.network on Instagram. So again, thank you so much, Amina, for joining us. Thank you everybody else for joining us, and hopefully see you next week. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Assalamu alaikum. Bye, guys.
Bye.